It's finally here, a truly surreal experience, having followed this game through years of early access, for it to be released to overwhelming praise that it rightfully deserves. So I will do my part and help new players overcome the initial learning curve, as well as showing prospective new players what this game has to offer. Kenshi is an open world RPG. At its core, it is a survival game. You start out weak and outnumbered, scraping together coin to buy food. But through alliances, experience, and dedication, you can grow to build your own city or topple entire empires. In that way, the story is player driven, with many unique characters and mature themes to drive their trials and tribulations in the story of overcoming adversity. In Kenshi, you are not the hero. You are just one faction that exists in this cruel world. Kenshi is a dangerous place, with its various monsters, denizens, and even environments trying to kill you. Some scenarios have much harsher penalties for failure than others, and should be avoided by a weak party. Further, a bad encounter can leave you in worse situations, such as having a crippled leg forcing you into more dangerous encounters later. Understanding the threat of each encounter will come with experience, but I'll explain the basic mechanics here. In the bottom left is your status panel, with everything you can need to know at a single glance. Your vitals and each of your limbs have their own health conditions. Green is good, red is cut, and black is stun. Stun will heal itself slowly over time, but cut needs to be medically treated before it can recover. And as cut damage can degrade even while you are unconscious, it makes it a significantly more dangerous threat. Damage on any of your body parts will affect your stats and hamper combat and other performance. When an arm or leg reaches zero, you lose function of that limb. Players with broken legs will crawl, and those with broken arms may not be able to use their weapons. If that limb falls sufficiently negative, they will lose that limb permanently and will require robotic prosthetics to continue functioning at normal capacity. Your vitals, on the other hand, are your head, stomach, and chest. When these drop to zero, you will lose consciousness, and if they fall sufficiently negative, you will die. Blood follows a slightly different system, but has the same limits as normal vitals. Toughness is your most important stat for staying alive, as it directly reduces damage and mitigates wound degradation. Further, a character with good toughness will often be able to get back up from an unconscious state in combat. Be sure to hover over every item in the character page to understand what these skills do. And note that you can hover over any item on the status panel to show a current list of effects, be it from equipment or injuries. You can also click here to show derived stats. Equipment in Kenshi is rather straightforward, and yet has enough depth to offer interesting decisions. We will start with weapons. Damage types and skill bonuses will be a major deciding factors in choosing a weapon. You could be a katana-wielding duelist ninja or a master of blunt trauma, among other options, and they all have their benefits. All you need to know about the math here is that these numbers do not reflect weapon damage, but instead your character's skill effect on damage. Simply put, a master swordsman can make better use of your shiny new saber. Moving on to armor, things get a little more complicated. Here we are concerned with coverage, resistance, and for cut damage, efficiency. Coverage is simply the percentage chance that any hit will be protected by that armor against that specific body part. If multiple armors cover the same body part, they will each apply their own roll separately. Resistance is the percentage reduction of all damage from that type if the armor applies. Cut resistance efficiency is a special thing that only applies to cut damage. It represents the proportion of your cut resistance that is actually nullified damage. The remainder is converted to stun, so higher numbers for all three of these is better. The other thing to consider with armor is the rather heavy penalties that come with wearing good protective gear, ranging from skill penalties to speed penalties to even the sheer weight of the equipment itself. It is important to keep a character's role in mind when you decide what equipment to outfit them with. I have an ongoing series on the math if you're interested in further reading. Animals in general are the bane of new characters. They are vicious, they are fast, they do mostly cut damage, and you do not want to be unconscious next to a carnivore. However, they cannot wear armor and they cannot block, making them absolute pushovers for anyone with combat experience. The game also features a fleshed out range system, from turrets to crossbows and special armor protections against ranged projectiles, simply titled Harpoon Resistance. This is a flat reduction, not the percentage reductions from before. Range damage per hit is determined entirely by the weapon. and your relative elevation advantage bonus. Training characters with range skills will make them better at accuracy, reload speed, and avoiding friendly fire. Although it may not do much damage, weak crossbows are still effective against armored opponents with the benefit of melee combatants as well, in that you can stagger them, allowing a free hit from your melee friend. There are other technical advantages to use for your own benefit, such as using a small nimble weapon to attack an enemy who is recovering from a swing from a heavy weapon, essentially landing a free hit due to your speed advantage. The stealth system is rather robust, emulating vision and hearing of NPCs nearby. This system is complemented by stealing, lockpicking, and assassination skills. There's even a smuggling feature for you wannabe drug kingpins out there. Kenshi is big, as in 24 times the size of Skyrim big. There's a lot out there to discover. Great dangers, great rewards, delicious snippets of lore. I heartily recommend that you discover these things for yourself, which is why I won't be spoiling anything here. Be cautious. Be curious. If you're really worried about your characters, train up your athletics first. Just about every danger can be outrun above 20 run speed. And if your computer has a hard time keeping up with the fast-paced travel at high time acceleration, a neat trick is to leave the camera focused on a stationary character and you can watch the progress on the map, without needing to graphically load each of those zones. Progression is the heart and soul of Kenshi. You can progress economically or complete research, acquire loot, and your characters get better at what they do all the time. Your faction can grow, adding new members, squads, outposts. You can craft new gear and automate the boring tasks with job lists. A fully self-sufficient base is possible, but if you plan on settling somewhere, location is everything. There are various resources that are key to have that you can find with the prospecting tool. Which ones you care about depends on what the outpost will be for. But regardless, any permanent facilities will attract the attention of the locals, and you need to be prepared for that. A safer alternative is buying a house in town where you'll be protected by the guards and the walls, as well as being closer to the traders. If you intend to build a base, I recommend buying a house in town first and completing your early research, at least until your characters have some basic combat competence. But none of these systems are required for a compelling gameplay structure. You can be a wandering trader or vagabond mercenaries, bandits even, or like one particular mental case, try to genocide the entire game world using only the weakest character. Ultimately, Kenshi is the culmination of over a decade of hard work, largely led by one man and his unflinching vision. Kenshi knows what it wants to be, and it delivers on that promise in spades. I only have a few small cautions for this game. If you approach it as a tactical RPG with strategic elements, you'll be fine. This is not your generic action game. Don't treat it like that. There are some fairly large performance hits, especially when running quickly or loading in new areas that you've never been to before. If it gets too much for your computer, you can go to the main menu and import your game. That will unfortunately reset some looting things, but it clears out a lot of the memory in the background, and things will run more smoothly for a while. And lastly, this is a high investment game. It will take several hours to get a full grasp on the game mechanics, and hundreds of hours to explore all of its content. And on top of that, it ships with an editor and an in-game editor, with Steam Workshop porting built in. There is a lot of content for your money here. It is no mistake that full release was 3 weeks before Christmas. For many of us in this community, Kenshi has been the gift that keeps on giving. I personally will be putting it in a few stockings this year,